for Thursday, February 21st, 2019 will come to order, and I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon's absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher. Here. Mr. Schron. Mr. Schron is absent at the moment. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay. Next, we have on the agenda consideration of the minutes from the meeting on February 11th. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from February 11th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and the minutes from February 11th, 2019 are approved. Matters referred to committee, one piece of legislation, Resolution 2019-0046.
Resolution number 2019-0046, making awards on requisition number 42655 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $573,224 for Internet Service Provider services for the period 1/1/2019 to December 31st, 2023.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Hi, Janelle Green on behalf of the Department of IT. Just making some corrections to the resolution. Upon review of the item, shows that I made a clerical error. The actual resolution and the amounts of the contract should total $344,444. Still going to AT&T and Verizon for the services. The amounts of the contracts are, again, correct in the item in on-base, so the contracts are correct, so those amounts aren't changing. The information that I put in was incorrect. Also, on the resolution, want to include the language that distributed denial of service security is also included in these services from the vendor AT&T.
Questions by my colleagues? Yes, Ms. Baker.
Just trying to understand the change. As it stands now, the AT&T and the Verizon equal the 573,244. So if we change that number to 344,440, is that what you said?
Right. So the AT&T amounts total $273,000 and some odd change. That
Right.
was correct.
That's okay.
The amount that I entered in for Verizon was incorrect. That should be about $71,220. In total, the amount for altogether should be the $344,444.
Not to 573.
Correct.
Got
So
it.
just wanted to make sure that I addressed that right on the onset.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And is this a contract that we currently have in place that we're doing a new contract, or is this a new item?
Well, this is, we submitted an RFP for this back in July that closed on August 7th. So we do currently have AT&T's internet services right now. We are doing a second circuit with Verizon, so that would be a completely new service. Again, going back to the RFP, it did close on August 7th of 2018. Was 13 vendors were on the plan holders list, and we received five responses back.
And how does the cost of the AT&T contract compare with what we're currently paying?
The cost did decrease. When Andy Moles gets into his presentation, he will go over the changes in the costs.
And the contract with Verizon, what are we paying them for?
We will be paying them for internet services, a separate circuit, and Andy will go into how that lays into our plan.
And also, what is distributed denial of service security?
That is a security level for when we could potentially receive attacks. And again, Andy will go over, and he has a PowerPoint presentation to review with you today.
Okay, well, before we hear Andy's presentation, We'll go to Nan first.
Just before you go to the presentation, I heard you say that it closed the RFPs on August 7th of last year.
That's correct.
Is there a reason why we're here in February and this contract begins January 1st?
Well, we had to go back and forth on negotiations first there's an evaluation of all the responses. And when you have a complex RFP like this was, we had to take the time to evaluate all of those responses. Second, there's contract negotiations going back and forth between both vendors to see those services. Also, with the distributed denial of service security, that was something that was included in the RFP, and having each vendor understand our needs, and because that portion is a very complex situation as well, going through all of that. Now, we did go through and we were able to complete the negotiations with Verizon first, and that happened in about November once all of that was done. And then we were still going through some things with AT&T that unfortunately took us to about the end of December. And so once we had all of those pieces in place, we did make it over to the pending queue for executive and board and council review January 9th, and it made it onto the agenda February 5th. So that gap, I don't know what happened, but that's, when
Right,
we're going through this process, it can take a while.
So, if I may, so 5 months from the time that the RFP was approved till the first day of the contract isn't enough time? And would you reconsider when you would put those RFPs out for the next time we?
Oh, definitely. So we start earlier and earlier, and if we have RFPs that we need to go out for this year, we're looking at March, and making sure that we have those in place if we need something to be in effect before the end of the year.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are any services being provided, or can no services be provided until we approve the contract?
AT&T has still been providing services. We wanted to make sure that the county still had internet, so AT&T has been providing the services up until this time.
And at this point, I'd like to ask if any of my colleagues would be willing to make a motion to accept the substitute version as the version before the committee, correcting the clerical error on the amount and adding about the denial of service security.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to accept the substitute version as the version before the committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, we're welcoming Ms. Chantel Brown to the meeting, and we're working on Resolution 2019-0046. We've just accepted the substitute version, which corrects a clerical error and adds about distributed denial of service. But we're going to hear more about the legislation itself. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. And here is Andy Moles with the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
What I wanted to cover is basically the reason for the two new circuits and the two new speeds. Since 2014, we've seen a significant increase of our web applications. And the current circuits that we currently have in service as of today cannot really support all of the web services that we are kind of pushing through. I'll try to be as layman as possible. The current circuits that we do currently have today are only 100 megabit, okay? You probably have those at your house right now, and we're running the county on it. So knowing that all of the different applications, and I'll show you a graph later of the increase of the applications. There's 1,800 applications, web applications that we service, and that goes beyond just personal use, county use, and external use. So these two vendors that we chose were significant from the other five just because of the fact of the cost efficiencies. They were definitely a lot lower price. I do have prices of the RFPs for those. So if you need them, I can provide those prices so you can take a look at it. The next thing is the tier one. Explanation of tier one is they are the main provider. Usually when you buy internet service from a different vendor, like your home or there's other companies out there, but those companies actually buy their internet service from these two services. So we want to go with the top notch, the state of the art, 100%, number one vendor out there. and that's AT&T and Verizon. There's two more, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But AT&T and Verizon are local in this area that supply the service. Again, we talk about secure reliability. They've been around. We did a lot of research on these two vendors, and the stability of their internet service has been impeccable. Redundancy, that's why we want to at least go with two. We currently have one in, as Janelle mentioned, we do have one in service today, but we're gonna take one of those circuits and we're gonna dedicate it strictly for Wi-Fi usage. The other two will be our primary internet links that will be redundant in nature. So we have the ability to fail over in case something does happen. They'll go over and we don't lose any service. The graph up on the screen, if you can see it, shows over the course of years the growth of applications. I'm sure you can just imagine all the different applications that we're running today that utilize the internet. So as we have body cameras, that has really increased substantially through the prosecutors, sheriffs. Office 365, which is our email, as we continue to hire people, we continue to service our email. That's our email package. And then the various cloud applications that we have are just too many to mention. And of course, last but not least, we have ERP riding on that as well. The DDoS is a cybersecurity package that we utilized a couple years ago, and it expired, and then we ended up, AT&T was able to supply or provide DDoS for a very reasonable rate and cost. We do not want, I'm sure you've heard DDoS spoken about, but basically a good example is Akron. They may have not had a DDoS attack, but they did have an infection to all of their city components and all their computer systems just recently. I was told a couple of weeks ago they had to shut down the whole city of Akron because of improper services to prevent any type of attack. Having our DDoS on all of our circuits across will protect us from any type of malware, cyber threats that may potentially disable our entire network. So that's that. The other kind of gives you a better description of the cyber espionage, the crime, hacktivism. It's kind of a lot of buzzwords, but basically these are the bad people trying to get into our network to do damage. And then basically I brought down the costs. So what we've done is we've gone to a 1 gig circuit compared to a 100 meg circuit. So we're going 10 times the speed of what we currently are running on for only $2,000 more. So that's a fantastic deal. And with all the redundancy and the cybersecurity on top of it, I thought those were the two best vendors to basically provide all the security and access that we need for 5 years.
Questions? Councilman Tuma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question as far as departments that this covers. Does this cover the courts too, the court system?
Everyone.
Everybody. Okay, good.
Everyone.
Okay. And then, I think you answered it. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, Ms. Baker.
Was there anything that happened that triggered our need to have more? Or is this just a proactive decision that we felt was needed before something did?
I'm going to say yes and yes, because probably about a couple of years ago, about a year ago, we started seeing a slowdown latency issue, and we realized that we were basically maximizing the circuit out. So we had to make some adjustments, and it was a lot of hands-on. And from that point in time, that's when we started to be more proactive in getting these circuits in.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Since we're already into the contract period. I'm going to recommend to my colleagues, if you're willing, that we recommend this for second reading suspension. So if somebody would like to make a motion that we recommend Resolution 2019-0046 as substituted on its merits for approval under second reading suspension. Okay, is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend the proposed substitute on its merits for second reading suspension. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it and is so recommended. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Okay, so that takes care of our resolution, and that brings us to the second item on our discussion. As everybody knows, when we were scheduled a couple weeks ago to have Sig Berzens's presentation, that was during the polar vortex, and we shut down everything that was not of immediate urgency. And so today we have an opportunity to hear a report that's a little bit shorter than we would have done then, but it's also more up to date because a couple of weeks have passed, and so we're going to catch up a little bit. So I appreciate your coming in this afternoon.
My pleasure. Good afternoon, everybody. So this, this is more focused towards sort of the highlights and an update because I did put together for you a report on last month, and that was a couple of weeks ago. And I am working on and will put together a report for this month, which will basically come out at the end of next week. So let's talk a little bit about highlights. There's good news, and that's always a good thing. The general ledger and project activities, as well as flexible budgeting, which are the three major accounting-oriented modules or capability, if you will, is actually, looks like it's going to actually launch, but it's going to launch not quite in the very first part of March, but probably a week or so or 10 days into March. And that is as they have, in essence, rescheduled from their original thought it was going to be early in February. So, but that is positive news, that's good news, and that by the end of March, the team is projecting that they will be able to say that the new general ledger is the book of record, if you will, for the county. So that's, I think, an excellent step forward. We've talked earlier about what are some of the high-risk areas, and there's absolutely no question in my mind that WFM, which is time reporting, and Payroll are the two modules that are probably the highest risk. They're quite complex because of all the work rules that we have, and of course because you've got in essence the ultimate validator, and that ultimate validator is every employee when they receive their first check. So high risk, and therefore a lot of focus should be placed on it. But there is some good news associated with that, and that is that the team is moving forward and is doing unit testing on all of those work rules. And so they've, in essence, completed their first iteration, they started their second iteration, and they will have a third iteration before they literally step into actually doing integrated systems testing for WFM. The other piece that's going on right now, which again is some good news, is that the integrated system testing for the procurement and accounts payable modules started last week as planned, which is a good thing. That means that they're maintaining pace, and that's moving forward well. And we'll see a little bit more about that as we get into some details. Another piece of quite exciting good news, I think, is that I think we all knew that the budgeting solution from Infor had some difficulties. It didn't really meet the county's requirements, And I think a determination was made in December that it wouldn't work for the county. Fortunately, the Infor has an agreement with another organization for another solution. The name of that organization is Sherpa, and their particular solution is called Budget Formulation Management. And so that is actually been presented to the county with a change order to the contract. And again, the good news is that's a $0 change order. So, and we're talking about several $100,000, I think, in terms of value that Infor is agreeing to absorb in terms of how they're going to bring that forward. The actual change order, I believe, is ready to be presented to the Board of Control, which will meet, I believe, Monday. And hopefully they will approve that at that time. And if they do, then I think Sherpa is ready to get moving and seem to have quite a bit of experience and seem to think that they're going to be able to meet the relatively aggressive schedule for finishing the budget formulation management implementation by no later than May, which is a good thing, because that positions that solution for your upcoming budget season, which I think starts July. Is that about right?
The administration will be starting work about that time. If they have not already started, they probably have started already in some ways.
Okay.
And we start in the council on around the end of September.
Okay, thank you. I do have a point at the bottom there, just to kind of remind everybody, Sherpa's product comes with a reporting tool, which is referred to as Business Objects. That happens to be a tool that's owned by SAP. That's what comes with the product. So in order to move forward and meet this aggressive schedule, the team's probably going to need to acquire a few licenses of Business Objects. Won't be a lot of money, it's somewhat nominal. But they are working towards actually replacing that, and that's going to require certainly some integration work and some cooperation work and so forth between Sherpa and Infor, so that we can go, as we go forward, we'll use Infor's reporting tool, which is called Birst. Okay?
Yes, you may. Please proceed.
Given I'm on Board of Control, are we anticipating that the change order that they will be asking for will still be at a zero amount and only asking for change of suppliers?
It's actually not a change of suppliers, it's change of product.
Change of product then?
Yeah, because Infor in essence is sponsoring, because there's an agreement between Sherpa and Infor. Sherpa just happened, I don't know what their agreement is exactly and how that works, but they're presenting that as a change to the Infor contract.
So that change is the only thing we will be approving? No dollar amount will be attached to that?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
And that's
thank you.
supposed to happen Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's a $0, it'll probably be in the consent agenda.
In the
would be
consent
my
agenda.
guess.
Got it.
I want to talk a little bit about project reporting. Certainly, I think we're aware that the January report from the team was a little bit late, but I think they were making every effort to try to make it as current as they possibly could, because there were some changes in terms of outlook and schedule, and so that was the reason why that was going on. I think there's some good news here. I'm still in the good news area here, and that is that there's a consolidated plan now. There's a master plan, and this is, in my mind, quite a good statement and a good step forward, because we've had multiple different plans. We've had difficulties in terms of getting access to some of these plans. A lot of those kinds of things have been going on. And so now that there is a plan, and the team is presenting that to you and telling you that it is a single version of the truth, again, a good thing. Therefore, all of their summary reporting is going to be based off of that plan. Okay?
So that plan is both the county's position and Infor's position
Yes, sir.
integrated,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Exactly.
which we haven't had in the past.
It's been a little difficult, yes.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so you will then see your progress being reported to you against that plan. I do make a comment here that there is a weekly status report, and again, a few months ago, the concern was that there was that wasn't reflective of, again, both teams, Infor and county. So now that has been consolidated, and that report is there, and it just simply needs to be published and put out. And I do believe you are now getting copies of that.
Yes, we've been getting them for a few weeks now.
Yeah, which is a good thing. And especially because, when you start seeing the monthly reports from DOIT and from the project team, you will probably start seeing that the fourth week of the month, the last week of the month's report will probably roll right into that monthly summary, as it should. We have a third-party assessor, as I'm sure you know, we've talked about them, and I think it's important to recognize that that's moving forward as well. They have completed their assessment of readiness for the Procurement Integration System Testing. They have provided some issues and concerns. They have been addressed. The county has taken action against those, and that's a good thing. And so the next step will be that they will do a very quick assessment, readiness assessment for user acceptance testing for procurement and accounts payable as well. So that's as it should be, and that's good news. They are getting ready for the WFM, or the time reporting readiness assessment for integrated system testing, and they will be working on that for the next few weeks as the team goes through the iterations that they're doing right now in terms of unit testing. So that's on schedule. That's the way it ought to be. That's a good thing. I do want to remind everybody, though, that the scope of their work stops here. Okay, it only addresses procurement and accounts payable, and it only addresses workforce management and payroll in terms of the modules that they are looking at. Okay? And that goes back to, if you'll recall, there was a change order and a discussion about that. I think it was either late November or December. Okay? So let's talk about project progress. One of the things that the team is doing on their weekly report, which is a good thing, is that they're telling you what their wins were last week. So this is from last week's report. This is a listing of their wins. It's the things that they've accomplished. Again, I think that's a good thing. So we're repeating ourselves a little bit here. Procurement Integrated Systems Testing is moving along. Workforce Management Integration Systems Testing is moving along. There's a lot to do in that one, and I'll show you that in just a second. You'll notice that, in anticipation of the Sherpa change order being approved, there's already been some data extracts so they can move forward with that and maintain that aggressive schedule that they've got for trying to finish that up. Change order 25, which happens to be the Sherpa BFM change order, that we've already said. Here's an interesting comment of something that was accomplished last week, which I think is important, and that is that the internal audit team continues to work and looking at various things on the project, as they should. Well, here's an example of something where the internal audit team said, wait a minute, we may have a segregation of duties issue here, we need to fix that. And they have done that. So the go-live checklist is in process, they're working on that.
What do you mean? Could you elaborate a little bit about a segregation of duties issue?
Okay, what they're talking about there is that a person could approve their own journal voucher.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Not a good thing.
No.
So you just simply want to have the system enforce that segregation of duties by basically saying, no, somebody else has to hit that button that says approved. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The Go Live checklist I know is in process. I'll definitely have a copy of that in the report, and so we can see what the details are and how they're doing. But the point is that they are working on that and they're paying attention to it. The key thing now is going to be that we need to have the fiscal department basically approve that it's now time to turn the system on. So that's a major decision that's sitting out there that's going to have to take place in the next week or so, give or take. And lastly, the HR department has been working on the organizational structure in GHR for several months now. That's been a fairly major reconstruction, if you will, that they've had to do to make sure that the organization structure within the system matches the way the world exists. And so they've been working on, and they have finished that, which was a major undertaking. So here's your single version of the truth. You're gonna see this, and it'll be in every weekly report. Again, I think that's a good thing. Hard to read, hard to read, but a good thing in the sense that there's one version of the truth. So we're now seeing all of the major modules, the various components of the project that need to be accomplished. We're seeing what their start date is. We're seeing what their targeted completion date is. There is a line, it's very hard to see, that actually says this is where, today, it has, as of the time of actually printing that. And then it shows you the percent complete for each various line item. And then at the very top, you'll see the 50% overall. So, and the last report that you had from the team, I believe it was either 48 or 49%. So things are moving forward, and every week this will change. And presumably it will constantly get better. I mean, that would be the hope. Okay, so that's what you'll see. So now, so then the question becomes, well, what should we be paying attention to? So I would suggest to you there are certain areas that you need to pay attention to. You know, the team has already said that there's some concern about how much they have to do. Well, you can see it. You can see that box there where I say the highest 3 risk months. You've got 3 months where you got high risk because there's, guess what? 15 concurrent launches are happening right there. So that's a burden. Not only that, virtually, not all, but virtually all of these are fiscal or OBM. Okay? So that's where the load is, that's where the pressure is going to be. I think Infor, being the contractor, the consulting organization, will probably be able to handle, you know, any kind of adjustments they need to from a resource perspective. Where you find yourself into a potential concern here is the fiscal and the OBM groups, okay, as they are trying to react to this many things going on at the same time. Okay, now granted, some of them will have different people, but in others, they're gonna have the same.
Plus, they got to do the budget.
And they have to do everything else. The audit, the budget, there's a long list. There's a long list, and it's something to be concerned about. So what other things should you be looking at? So one is this whole idea of, well, how is the team planning all this concurrent things? And it's entirely possible that by the end of the month, when they say they're going to tell you about the new impact and result of what their potential replanning is going to be, that you might see some changes here maybe for that reason. I have an arrow in here that's pointing to something, again, it's hard to read, but that's the line item that I think you need to be looking at and probably should be asking questions about. This is the line item that says, oh, by the way, we have to prepare GHR data for WFM and payroll. Okay? So we have to get that ready, and therefore that becomes part of the critical path. That makes WFM and payroll dependent upon that specific line item. That's the one that everybody's working on right now to try to figure out how long is it going to take to do it, what do they have to do, and so forth. They're working on that. I know they are. And that's the piece that's going to drive whatever they come up with at the end of next week. Because if that takes too long, then WFM and payroll get pushed. Because it is a dependent activity. So, okay, so yeah, you've got to be looking at that, maybe asking questions about that. But you also probably might want to pay attention to, well, what is the indicator of whether or not the project is maintaining pace? And the pace, of course, is how soon or how fast are we supposed to be doing these things in the project? Well, if I look at this particular one, I know that they're doing some replanning here, which means these things will change. But the question becomes, what is the start date and what is the percent complete? So if you've got a start date out there that says we're supposed to start something next week, or let's say we say something is supposed to start this week. And then you get to the report next week and you look at it and say, oh, you were supposed to start this week, and the percent complete is 0. Well, that to me says nothing's been done. So that might be something that you might want to look at and watch as you see these weekly reports. Okay? The other piece that you need to pay attention to, which again is pace related, is you see these 2 high-risk areas. I think you need to be paying attention to those high-risk areas. And, you know, and in fact, I think the team recognizes that, hey, our pace is probably reasonably good with WFM. But you'll notice that the pace, meaning the percent complete, isn't quite the same for payroll. Okay, so the 2 of them ought to probably be tracking somewhat closely. So there's some catch-up that probably needs to take place on the payroll side. And I think the team knows that. I mean, they talked about it in the Executive Steering Committee yesterday. And then lastly, down at the bottom, you know, there's an arrow there just to kind of remind everybody that as long as you're using this tool, then every week that line will move. There's a vertical line there that says this is today. And so you should be looking at the relationship of all those blue lines in relationship to today. Okay? Good. I'm continuing with the good news story here. I mean, there's some positive things going on with the team. They're starting the integrated systems testing for procurement. They're tracking it every day. This is a good thing. They're tracking it every day. You see the dates on the left-hand side. You see what they've completed in terms of the tests they've run, how many are left over, how many are, you know, that's what they should be doing. And that's a good thing. And the items I've got circled there, in essence, they're maintaining pace. You basically have got 6 days worth there, and in 3 days you did about half. Well, okay, that's 3 days to do the other half. That makes sense. WFM, not quite the exact same story. A good news is that the team recognizes they need to track, and they are tracking all of the activity for the unit testing of WFM. So, but this is now what's going on for iteration 2. It's their second pass. Okay, and if you'll notice at the very top, the target is they've got to run 1,300 tests. And these represent those work rules, okay? And you'll notice that, you know, reasonably so, they basically laid it out and said, by week, this is how many we got to run and how many we got to finish up. Basically, I'm telling you it's too early to tell because I don't have the most current information. I've just got information that's partial from last week, okay? But they're aware of it. I mean, they're paying attention to it, which is a very positive kind of thing as far as I'm concerned. So then there's these are some comments from the team, and I paraphrased them from an email. And I think it's the reason I'm including these is to let you know that the team's paying attention and that they know what's going on. And I think that's a positive thing. You know, so one of the reasons why, you know, they didn't quite get as much done last week as they should have, you know, because they got payroll going on this week. That's the comment that we've already known about. I mean, whenever payroll hits, all of a sudden the payroll people not going to be able to do too much of this. So the consultant's been out and you know, and so forth. But they know, okay, so they know what's happening and they're paying attention to it. And I think that's a good thing. And then the last line you'll notice, because if you go back and look at that chart, there's oh, by the way, we may have to use a fifth week. And then there's nothing in there. So that's the extra stuff that you maybe can't get cleared up. But right now they're saying, well, we don't think we're going to have to use that. And again, that's good news. That's good news. I wanted to
So
show you.
will this
Go ahead.
WFM unit testing chart be included in the weekly reports?
Could be, should be. I don't know.
Okay, well, let's ask that be included. This would be a good thing to track.
Okay.
Okay, and also, we're pleased to have our council president with us at this time. Okay.
So the weekly report gives you about 4 or 5 pages of that describe each of these line items over here on the left, which is, most of them are modules in the system. There's a couple of things that are not, I mean, project management, change management, and technology. But most of them are module related, and they basically, tell you what's happened in this past week, what are we gonna do next week? Fairly standard kind of thing. And then they give you a summary. And that summary is, are we doing well? Are we on pace? Are we not on pace? Are we trending down? Are we trending up? And those are the colored stoplight metaphor arrows. So this is the track of those reports since the beginning of the year. Okay, and I'll do this every month. I'll kind of keep track of it. So you need to be paying attention to what those trends are, because they start becoming harbingers of the future. Okay, so if we all know that payroll and WFM are the high-risk areas, and boy, I tell you, payroll just kind of sits there in yellow, continues to be yellow the entire time. Okay, and all I'm saying is that's what the team says about their status and where they are. So they're certainly not saying that it's perfect and it's wonderful and it's moving right along, it's green, go, go, go. No, let's be cautious. Okay?
And you're saying around the end of the month, in the next week or so, they're supposed to decide whether they think they can stick to the July 1 date or whether they're gonna have to move it a quarter or more.
Or just move it. I mean, I don't know what it would be. But yes, they have promised the council, and that was in their presentation when they met with you 4 weeks ago or so. They promised you that they would have an assessment of what the impacts are, what their reschedule might be, based on whatever they're learning and over the next few weeks, and that's where they're at. I mean, so that's next week. So next week, which means that when they prepare their February month-end report for you, it should have all that.
Absolutely.
It should have all that.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So anyway, I think, just kind of tracking and looking at this thing and seeing what's all yellow all the time certainly tells you where the team thinks that they need to be paying attention to. An anomaly that I see in here is that, 2 weeks ago, budgeting and core financials were green. And then last week, they changed to yellow. Okay? So, again, my reaction would be I'd ask the team why. Again, because it becomes a harbinger. I don't know what they're going to say in their weekly report this week, because we're still moving. Everybody says we're in pretty good shape. We're still moving, and maybe it's yellow because the chief financial officer is on medical leave. I don't know. Okay. Project governance, so there are a lot of things being juggled. So I think we need to recognize what the project focus is. When we first started this thing, months ago, and what was reported to the council was the 3 major work streams, okay? It was public works / EAM, enterprise asset management, for purposes of work orders, okay? Then it was, okay, there's this human resources, everything associated with human resources was the other work stream. And then the last one was the fiscal work stream, all right? Well, in essence, the first 2 are in the throes of being pretty much done. I mean, everybody is kind of, EAM is hardly even, they don't even report progress too much in terms of status on EAM. They're basically consider it in production. GHR is kind of sort of in production. So the focus on those 2 is not as prevalent right now, and nor will it be for the next 6 to 8 months. The next 6 to 8 months of focus will be virtually all fiscal and budget. Okay? Period. That's what's going to happen. All right? So this focus will continue to place pressure on your county fiscal and OBM staff, because they have so much else to do in terms of their day-to-day jobs, and now they're going to be asked for even more, because every one of, remember we said there are 15 concurrent launches in that 3-month period. Every one of those is going to require, we got to validate some data. We got to do some integrated systems testing. We've got to do some user acceptance testing. We've got to train. Every one of those is going to require that kind of activity, and that kind of activities can only be done by county personnel. Okay, Infor can't do that for us. So that's where the pressure lies. Okay, so this focus also places even more need for timely decision-making, particularly with regard to deliverable approvals, change order approvals, as well as go-no decisions by module. So it's important that those decisions are made in a timely manner. And the concern, of course, is that you now have a few people in that fiscal group who are not going to be available for medical reasons. Okay. So the bottom line is I'm suggesting to you that the fiscal and the OBM teams are in a position of overload. With regard to those fiscal resources, so the CFO, the controller, and the one you probably don't know about is the lead payroll analyst. Is on temporary leave for the next few months for medical reasons. So from a continuity perspective, interim replacements must be fully empowered. The important word here is empowered to make the many project-related decisions that will be required over the coming months. Okay? And I have not been told yet, I do not know if someone has been empowered to make decisions for the chief financial officer. I do not know if someone has been empowered to make decisions for the controller. I do know that the team has looked at and is searching for and are in the throes of identifying potential replacements for this payroll analyst. Because they're already starting to see, we had to make this decision on payroll and that person's not available. Okay? So the outlook, there's still a stairs to climb, and basically we've got a big load here to carry, is the outlook. So I've said this in the report, I'll repeat it. I think the team and the county has reached another tipping point. Okay, and that tipping point will be the end of February. You'll talk about it and get the reports and all that kind of thing early in March. But it, very well could be, everything's fine, we're going to continue to maintain that schedule, or it could be, we got to move these things for the following reasons, and here's the impact of them. So I think it could very well happen to you, and that's the timing, and that's when it'll happen.
So, since you're saying we have this late February tipping point about the events that are currently scheduled for July 1, does that mean that we're reasonably confident that the go-live events that are currently scheduled in April and May are gonna go forward?
Let me show you that in just a second.
Okay.
Okay? I just wanted to mention the fact that no matter what, with the change order, the $0 change order, which is potentially a sizable situation, with that being $0, it's good news as far as, even if you do some minor stretching of things, is it going to have an impact on the overall 25 million? And I would suggest to you probably is not. Only if you've got a more significant stretching of the project are you faced with the potential of at least more money now. But you do have $1 million still, round numbers, you still have $1 million. So that's still there. But pieces of it are going to start getting taken away. If you buy X number of business objects licenses, that's going to cost a few shekels. If you, and there are other little components like that are all starting to show up in the border control agenda. Okay, we'll end up spending some of that, not a significant amount, but some of it. So you still have some room.
I looked in the weekly report and they had a list of upcoming change orders, and they were like there were like 4 or 5 of them, and it was like 2,000 for this and 5,000 for that. So you were not talking big money compared to the 922,000 which was the last estimate on
Right.
the money that hasn't been programmed yet.
But the bottom line says, if you end up extending WFM and payroll, and you end up extending that significantly, then you start looking at probably some noticeable dollars. So I wanted to show you, this is what the team presented in January, and this is you've seen this chart many times now, various color combinations and all that sort of thing, and they started putting arrows on here saying, this may move, is what they're trying to show you. In the Executive Steering Committee yesterday, same chart, but notice the arrows are a little longer, okay? This may move a little bit more. So here's kind of what I'm guessing. And I've looked at their plan, but I know there's going to be some changes to their plan. But we already know that what originally was considered to be January 1st go live or launch for GL was January. It's now probably no later than mid-March. Maybe March 11th, maybe March the 8th, whatever. I mean, but that's about, I'm just using it shorthand. So the target for the things in April, to answer your question, looks like it's holding. The plan says that the dates are still there. They're still in what they had changed earlier, which was late in May. So procurement and AP is probably going to be late in May. Okay, as opposed to April. In, the ones that they had for May 1st is probably the end of June, okay? But WFM and payroll is being held. I mean, right, so far, that plan says that those dates are locked. And I'm sure that's because if you move that one, you start getting into, do I need to move it a whole quarter? Okay? And so right now, it's holding. And the stuff that they had for August is now they're basically looking at mid-August. So the adjustments are not ridiculous. They're not out of line. They're not absurd. I mean, I think that they're reasonable given the various issues and problems that you end up having to happen in any kind of large project. Certainly, having some key people unavailable because of medical reasons is something that they've got to figure out. I mean, they've got to come up with, what are they going to do about that? Because not making decisions and saying, I can't decide whether we start general ledger. I mean, that kills you turning it on in mid-March. Okay? So that's my highlight story.
Okay, that was an excellent and very useful report, and I'm appreciative that we got as much favorable information as we did. That's encouraging. It's not 100%, but clearly there's a good number of things that are going pretty well at this point, and that's good to hear. Questions by my colleagues? Ms. Baker.
I know you went over this, but because it seems to be the most concerning, the payroll that we have on page 14 that shows down arrows pretty much through the middle to today, or since the 15th, how long can we sustain those down arrows? Because next to a down arrow then would be red. So, how long can we anticipate that those arrows would show down or even to the right? I don't know. And how long can we continue like that before we start thinking that we're not going to make it to July?
The arrows are clearly the judgment of the team project managers of the various teams. And I think it's fair that, they are trying to tell you a story. They are trying to be, I think, as straightforward as they possibly can. I don't think these necessarily are cumulative. I think they are status related, which means that they are sitting there saying, yeah, how are things this week? Okay, so in that sense, I don't think that they necessarily keep adding and pushing the arrow further down. But the point is, I mean, is that they are saying it, you know, it's not increasing, and we've just had another minor delay, or we didn't finish something last week that we really should have finished. That's not a good thing. I mean, and so I think they know that. So I think don't read it as being cumulative and pushing down and leading to, but by the same token, it's yellow, and yellow says there may be a schedule impact. Okay, there may be. You know, red says there will be a schedule impact. So that's kind of what they're trying to tell you. Am I helping?
Yeah, I guess I would, if it was an arrow to the right, not necessarily even going up, but a consistent arrow going down just seems concerning, that's all. It's not, they're
Well,
not,
to elaborate on that, we're expecting next week, by the end of February, there's going to be a major tipping point decision on whether they feel the July 1 date is doable. So I think,
That'll be telling.
once that they make that decision, either you're going to see a new schedule, or else you're going to see the July 1 date confirmed, and the arrow might move somewhat in a favorable direction if they believe they can confirm that date.
If the team locks into, we're gonna make it July 1, I would imagine it'll probably still continue to stay yellow because it's such a high-risk area, but the arrow direction might be horizontal, which says everything's moving along. If it gets delayed, then it probably should become green, because it'll in essence be replanned, right? It should, you know, I would think.
yeah.
Because you plan the way you want to get it done, I hope. So have I answered your question?
Yes, and if I can follow, if they were to decide at the end of February that they are not ready for a July launch, what does that do to our entire project?
Well, they're supposed to tell you. So the impact hopefully will be part of their discussion. But you know, the options they're faced with is, well, do we well, you've got several things that they need to be able to talk about. They need to talk about whether or not you should segregate WFM from payroll, that is an option. I mean, not a great one, but it is an option.
Yeah.
They could say, well, we only need to push this by 1 month. That's doable. It just requires additional work that was not be included in the project, because you've got to come up with some intermediary files. Okay, you've got to come up with some accruals and, you know, all that kind of thing, because you're not at the starting point of a quarter.
Right,
Okay, and so you've got to come up with that kind of stuff.
right.
And how do you relate to the existing systems and so forth. So it becomes complex.
Right.
So, and then the last option, well, there's probably plenty more variations of that theme, but the major one is, let's just go to the next quarter, which would take it to 10/1.
Right.
You know, as soon as you start talking about going to 10/1, you start talking about, well, I've just extended that piece of it by 3 months.
Right.
What do you do about how many Infor hours am I going to be able to take care of and use in those 3 months? Do I need to extend the project management time? You know, my reaction is that if you go to 10/1, you probably are going to have a change order with Infor for some amounts of money. Will it be $1 million? No. Will it be more than 25,000? Probably yes. Okay.
That helps, thank you.
What's the next go-live date after the general ledger?
Well, let's go look at the plan. I mean, it'll be clearly, how do I make this go backwards? Oh, here we go. So basically, if you take a look at the plan, all right? The next one that looks like it will be, well, they're gonna be changing some of these things. I'm looking for, it looks like it, it's gonna be procurement and accounts payable.
And when is that expected?
End of April, early May.
In April, okay.
Again, these are all probably gonna change on you at the end of next week.
Uh-huh,
I don't know how much.
sure. Okay. Other question I had is that, as you know, we instituted a new payment system for Infor last fall. And my question is how is that going? How many invoices have we received? How many have we processed? And have they been generally found to have delivered on their deliverables, or were there some that had to be pushed over to? So how has that new process been going?
There have been 3 invoices. The first 2, the team has conducted a reasonable and appropriate reconciliation audit, if you will, of those invoices. And I have seen those. Some of the activities and deliverables were moved to following months, but that was because of some reschedules. So, that's understandable. I have not received the reconciliation activity for the most recent billing. I have asked for it, but I have not received it yet. And because I'm trying to figure out whether or not there's a pattern. I don't know if there is yet, but I'm looking for a pattern of whether or not a bunch of these deliverables get pushed out to certain months, and all of a sudden does that month end up with too many? I mean, it could happen.
Right.
Right? And so that's what I'm looking for, but I have not seen that yet.
And have invoices number 1 and 2 been paid?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure Infor is pretty happy about getting paid.
okay. Any
can
other
ask one
questions?
other.
Ms. Baker?
Just to get an understanding here, because there's always been a concern about the disconnect of the team and how they now, good news, they've come together. When you made the comment that the team has consolidated various plans into a complete representation of the project as a master plan, and then we said Infor and the county for the first time are on the same page, did I hear that correctly?
In the same plan.
Same plan?
Yeah, in other
So,
words, because the plans were kept separate for
Right.
quite a while because Infor was delivering a deliverable. In other words,
Right.
Infor was doing something that contractually they were supposed to do,
right,
okay? And what was missing is the county's pieces, and the county's pieces were in separate places.
there was some concern early on that because they weren't reading off the same plan, that at the end of this project, there could be some differences of opinion as to what is owed and what isn't owed, or does that sound familiar or no?
That does not sound familiar. I mean,
Okay.
I don't particularly see where that might be a concern or an issue.
No,
I mean, the team is paying attention to the deliverables as they should. They are tracking them. The county is reviewing and approving deliverables as they should.
Okay,
Now, are they timely? That's another question. But the point is, I think that seems to be running along reasonably well from a contract management, contract performance perspective.
good to hear. Thank you.
So, am I correct that Infor sends us their opinion of what the deliverables were and what they accomplished, and then the county audits that and verifies that their list of deliverables is the same and verifies what the results are? So we're getting it from both ends, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's a reconciliation process. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we've had a good discussion. We're updated. We're making progress. We know where the risks are. We can see them right in front of us. And for everybody's information, the next rounds on this will be on Monday, March the 18th at 1 o'clock. The administration will come to present to us an update, and then the following Thursday on March the 21st, you will come back on the first day of spring or thereabouts, and by that time, we're going to find out whether in fact the general ledger system is up and running, because you said it should be no later than mid-March, so certainly by March 21st, we should have that up and running. So we're looking forward to that being accomplished. So if there's Council President.
I just wanted to apologize for the weather last month when you were inconvenienced and came into town and we had to cancel the meeting. So thanks for, understanding our unique problem here.
It's Cleveland.
No snow in Colorado, right?
Well,
And just one, now I better ask this question offline. Okay, so if there's nothing else, any miscellaneous business, nothing holds our attention, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.